They say you never forget the day the world ends. For me, it was a Tuesday. 14:36 hours. Give or take a breath. I was elbow deep in a rusted-out Sky Hauler C400 on the roof of my scrapyard, cursing its fuel injector for the third time that month. Sweat clung to my neck. Grease had worked its way beneath my fingernails. There was a storm on the edge of the horizon, but it wasn't made of clouds. I remember the light changed first, not like sunset or stormlight. This was something wrong. Cold, artificial. Then came the sound, like the sky inhaled and forgot how to exhale, like something old and terrible waking up after a million years. I looked up, and the sky split open. I'm not being poetic. It literally tore open, ripped like paper in the hands of some cosmic child. A white-hot seam bled across the heavens, wide enough to swallow continents. It didn't look like technology. It didn't look like anything that should exist. And from that wound in the sky, they came. Black silhouettes. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Silent, drifting like sharks in deep water. Each one shaped like a cathedral and a war crime. All in one. They didn't announce themselves. Didn't give us time to aim a telescope, let alone a gun. They just opened fire. The first strike hit New Houston. I saw it from the roof. A spear of blue-white plasma cracked the air like lightning. And then the entire skyline melted like wax. Skyscrapers went first, turned to liquid glass in seconds. Roads blistered and boiled. And then the wave hit me. I barely had time to scream. When I came to, everything was ash. The scrapyard was gone, just slag and bones and the melted ribs of old machines. Fires bloomed in pockets across the city, hungry and directionless. My left ear was bleeding. My right knee wouldn't bend right. I tasted copper and smoke. But worse than the pain was the silence. No sirens, no helicopters, no screaming, just wind brushing over what used to be civilization. My neighbor's kid, Milo, used to shoot bottle rockets off the alley fence. Smart kid, loved dinosaurs. I found him by the edge of the workshop wall, just a shadow burned into brick. Nothing left to bury. They didn't come to conquer. They came to cleanse. I didn't cry. Not then. I think something inside me shut down. Not to feel less, just to survive. I don't know how long I wandered. The sun dipped low behind the skeletal horizon. I limped past cars welded to the pavement from heat, past bodies, some frozen mid-run, others fused into glass. I didn't know where I was going until I found the tunnel. It used to be a storm drain. Now it was an escape hatch from hell. That's where I met them. Ghost Division. They moved like shadows. Fast, precise, dangerous. I didn't see them until the barrel of a pulse rifle tapped the side of my head. Human, someone barked. I nodded, somehow managed a half salute. Former Martian Blackfront. ID 0460. X-ray, Kilo. Discharged 6 years ago. They didn't lower their weapons, but one of them, tall, scar down her cheek, eyes like battlefield smoke, jerked her head toward the shadows. Get in. You're late for the war. They called her Reyes. Squad leader. Steel spine. Voice like gravel soaked in gasoline. With her were 3 others. Kovacs, twitchy and fast with a sniper's calm. Briggs, who looked like a bear made of old wars. And Nova. No last name. She handled comms and explosives like they were family heirlooms. They gave me water, half a protein bar, a nod. I asked what the hell was happening. Reyes just said, extinction. Unless we make them regret it. I didn't believe her. Not completely. But when you're sitting underground, lit by flickering emergency lamps, and the world above is on fire, you don't argue with the people still wearing guns and purpose. By morning, I had a rifle in my hands again. Not standard military. Not anymore. This was cobbled together from corpses, human and alien. Steel duct taped to alien alloy. Plasma batteries zip-tied to carbon barrels. The grip smelled like death. It felt like home. Our mission? Suicide. The enemy had deployed a crawler, a 6-legged death machine the size of a hotel. It moved through Dallas like a goddamn reaper, tearing through resistance bunkers like cardboard. Ghost Division wanted to kill it. Not just delay, not slow. Destroy. How? I asked. Reyes handed me a black box with red wiring and a trigger that looked suspiciously like it had been pulled off a toaster. EMP virus. We plug it into its spinal relay. Overload the cortex. Let the beast kill itself. Simple, she added, with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. Simple's not the word I'd use, but I suited up anyway, because something had awakened in me when the sky cracked. Something ancient, ugly, human. They didn't come for our resources. They came because they were afraid of us. And they should have been. We moved at dawn. The streets were bones, the sky bruised with smoke and radiation. We crawled through sewer tunnels, ducked under broken bridges, skirted past alien scouts that looked like armored spiders crossed with aircraft carriers. And then we saw it, the crawler. It was a mountain with legs, towering, screaming. Its claws dug trenches in concrete. Its turrets spun like they had eyes. Drones orbited it in tight formation, some scanning, some disintegrating anything with a pulse. It paused to feed on a fallen battalion, just reached down with its mechanical limbs and tore apart tanks like candy bars. Casual, efficient, like it had done this before, like it had been built for it. Reyes counted the field pulses. Every 30 seconds, it dropped its shield to recalibrate. That was our window. When it drops again, she said, we run like the devil himself is behind us. And so we did. I don't remember breathing. Just motion. Just now. Up a crumbled parking tower. Across the ribs of a collapsed monorail. We fired grapplers into its lower hull. Began to climb. That's when the drones saw us. Not bullets. These things fired gravity shards. Invisible. Silent. Juno, our demolitions guy, took one to the chest mid-climb. His body folded in half like paper. No sound. No farewell. Reyes didn't flinch, just kept climbing, and I followed. Because if we stopped now, then everything Juno, Milo, Earth meant nothing. I reached the top. The spine was humming, glowing faintly, like a heartbeat in metal. I jammed the virus box into the port. Click, buzz, silence. Then it screamed. The crawler bucked like it was alive. Metal groaned. Sparks flew from its joints. Its drones froze. The shield dropped. Now, Reyes screamed. I slammed the manual override. The EMP detonated. White light poured from the crawler's seams. Then boom, a thundercrack split the city. Shockwaves toppled buildings in a 5-block radius. Fire danced in the wind. Alien metal rained from the sky, like confetti at the end of the world. I landed hard, smoked, bleeding. Everything around me was rubble and ruin. But I laughed, because for the first time since the stars turned on us, we made them bleed. I'm not a war hero. I'm a junkyard rat. A soldier who got out too early and drank too much after. A man who knew how to fix machines better than himself. But that day I became something else. Not for revenge, not for glory, because someone had to remind these monsters. We are not a species that dies quietly. We fight with teeth, with fire, with fury that writes itself into the bones of the universe. We're not gods. We're not monsters. We're something worse. We're human, and when you try to erase us, you'd better not miss. You don't walk away from a burning titan and expect to feel alive. Not really. You survive, and then the ache comes. In your ribs, in your throat, behind your eyes. That morning, I woke up under the rusted belly of a collapsed tram. Dust in my lungs, blood in my mouth, and a strange warmth in my chest. I thought maybe it was hope, but no, just a cracked rib and a chunk of alien shrapnel near my heart. I blinked into sunlight that barely pierced the haze. The city was quiet in that haunted kind of way, like a graveyard that hadn't accepted it was dead yet. Beside me, Reyes crouched over a half-broken comms kit, soldering wires together like she was trying to fix the whole damn planet with spit and stubbornness. She didn't notice I was awake until I groaned. She didn't say, "Glad you're alive." Not her style. Just tossed a ration bar onto my chest and said, "Eat. We've got work." We regrouped in an old metro tunnel 2 stories beneath the ruins. Smelled like mildew, ash, and sweat. A new sin of war. The rest of the squad had gathered there. What was left of it anyway? Briggs had lost his left arm in the crawler blast, sat against a wall, smoking a half-crushed cigar like he didn't notice the stump wrapped in old bandages. Nova was patching up her gear in silence, cross-legged, her eyes glazed and far away. Kovacs hadn't spoken a word since we carried Juno's body out from the rubble and wrapped it in tarp. Funny thing about war, you lose one guy, it shakes the air, but you lose 5, and the silence becomes a new language. Everyone starts speaking it. Reyes called it the blood lull, the moment between battle and breakdown, where no one wants to be the first to fall apart. She gathered us around an old transit map taped to the wall. Burn marks covered half the lines, but it was enough. "We've got intel," she said. "The enemy's building a relay tower. Massive. 1 sector south of here. What used to be the Arlington Industrial Belt. They're using it to jam long-range transmissions and upload combat data to the fleet." She circled the map with a gloved finger. "If we take it out, we cripple their battlefield intel and clear a line to Resistance Command in Denver." Nova's voice was brittle. And if we don't, they pinpoint every pocket of resistance left on the continent and vaporize them by sunset. Nobody asked how she knew. We trusted Reyes, not because she gave us hope, but because she never lied. She didn't sugarcoat. If she said a mission mattered, then it mattered. She didn't promise we'd make it. She only promised we'd hurt them. I pulled her aside later, when the others were sleeping or pretending to. "You're not telling them everything," I said quietly. Her jaw tensed. I saw the codes on the crawler's uplink. That relay tower isn't just jamming us. It's calling something. She didn't look at me, just stared down the tunnel, where the dark began to breathe. "They're bringing down a warcaster," she whispered. "Command level entity. Controls orbital fire, planetary operations, and probably half their damn species tactics. So we kill it." She shook her head slowly. "You don't kill a warcaster. You bury it. You trap it. You bleed it until it doesn't know its own name. But if it lands and gets full systems control." She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. I'd seen one warcaster once on Titan during the Martian campaign. We lost 40,000 troops in 17 minutes. The planet never rotated the same after. I looked her in the eyes. "So what's the plan?" Reyes exhaled, voice low, grim. "We make a blood pact. One last mission." We moved out at dusk. The city wore its skeleton-like armor, burnt cars, shattered windows, broken streetlights swinging in the wind like hanged men. Every block looked like someone had hit pause on an apocalypse movie. But beneath that silence was motion. They were here, watching, listening. We kept low, used drone scans and map fragments stitched together by Nova's hacking, made our way through underground parking structures, collapsed malls, train tunnels clogged with ash. It felt like walking through the remains of a song you used to love. When we reached the edge of the industrial belt, the relay tower loomed above us, 300 meters of alien alloy, pulsing with that eerie cyan glow they always used. It wasn't just transmitting data, it was breathing. And at its base, guarded by a phalanx of armored wretches and anti-personnel drones, was the Warcaster pod, still dormant, but not for long. We didn't have much. No artillery, no exosuits, just rifles, grit, and a few tricks up Nova's sleeve. So we did what humans do best. We got dirty. Kovacs scaled a drain pipe like a spider, setting up high ground for sniper overwatch. Nova slipped into the ventilation ducts to lay charges and crack the tower's energy grid. Reyes and I went full frontal, disguised in armor stripped from dead enemy patrols. Risky? Sure. But fear's a currency we'd run out of months ago. We walked right into the fire. I'll never forget the moment it all went sideways. One of the drones, a tall one, 6 legs, laser-tipped, too smart by half, paused as we passed. Its lens dilated, scanned my face. I held my breath. The light blinked red. Shit. Reyes didn't hesitate. In one fluid move, she unslung her rifle, jammed it under its eye socket, and fired. The drone screamed, an unholy metallic shriek, and exploded, setting off every alarm within 10 clicks. All hell broke loose. We moved fast. I laid down cover fire, dropping foot soldiers with bone-shattering thuds. Reyes sprinted for the tower's main power coil. Drones rained plasma like the 4th of July on steroids. Kovacs popped heads from above like Death Zone artists. Nova's charges started singing from the vents. One by one, boom, boom, boom. Smoke, screams, static. Then it started to open. The Warcaster pod. A hiss like steam across bone. The outer shell peeled away. Something massive stirred inside. A silhouette of fluid armor and living machine. No face, just glowing glyphs across its plating like a language written in the blood of stars. The air went heavy. My bones wanted to kneel. But I ran. Reyes reached the central core first. Her comm crackled. EMP's not enough. It's shielded. We need the core to blow with the Warcaster inside. How long? I shouted over the chaos. 60 seconds, if I survive. Then she looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time since I'd met her. Get out, soldier. I shook my head. No damn way. This is the blood pact. You finished the mission. I am the threat. No. Damn it. Go. She wasn't asking. And something in her tone made me listen. I grabbed Nova on the way out. She'd been hit in the leg, dragging herself along the wires. Kovacs covered us from above until he ran out of ammo. I heard his last breath in my earpiece. Didn't look back. We reached the edge of the kill zone just as the relay tower cracked open like a blister and flames consumed the sky. The explosion lit up the city. For a moment, I could see it all. Every ruin, every shattered monument, every memory all drenched in firelight. Then the blast knocked us off our feet. When I awoke, Nova was unconscious beside me. My suit was half melted, my rifle gone, but I was alive. And the Warcaster was gone. So was Reyes. I found her dog tags in the ash hours later. Twisted, burnt, still warm. She knew what she was doing. She didn't die a martyr. She died a message. Later that night, I found a working transmitter. Spliced together parts from 2 dead drones and an old army beacon. Broadcasted one line across every channel, still listening. This is Ghost Division. Relay tower down. Warcaster neutralized. Earth fights on. It wasn't poetic, but it didn't need to be, because that was the blood pact. Not just to fight, but to remind them we're not a species that gives up. We're the ones who fight with broken fists and dying breaths. We dig our nails into the dirt and scream into the heavens. You can burn our cities. You can silence our leaders, but you will never quiet our rage. We are the storm they feared, and we are just getting started. You don't just walk away from a victory like that. You limp. You bleed. You count the names of the dead in your head until your tongue forgets how to say anything else. We'd taken down a crawler, destroyed a relay tower, killed a Warcaster. Big wins, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like breathing through a cracked rib while waiting for the next hammer to fall. And it always fell. We were down to 3 now. Nova, still limping, but alive. She didn't talk much anymore, just stared at the horizon like it owed her something, and she intended to collect. Her laugh was gone. She hadn't even cursed in 2 days. Briggs' arm gone. Temper worse. He was a walking mountain of scars and duct tape, still clinging to that stubby cigar like it was the last familiar thing in a world gone mad. And me, I hadn't looked in a mirror since the invasion started. Didn't want to see the blood crusted in my beard or the ash burned into the lines around my eyes. Didn't want to see the man who once fixed ships for a living, now patching bullet wounds with fishing line. We were what was left of Ghost Division, a trio of corpses too stubborn to lie down. We moved west. Rumors said there was a resistance node out near the Denver perimeter. Mostly civilians, doctors, mechanics, engineers who couldn't shoot straight but knew how to keep a power grid alive. We needed a safe house, a bed that wasn't concrete, maybe even food that didn't come out of a ration pack marked property of UN Space Dock 2073. But mostly, we needed a mission. Soldiers without purpose don't stay soldiers for long. They turn into ghosts for real. We found the camp buried beneath an old hydro dam, reinforced, camouflaged, powered by a patched-together fusion core and hope. A few dozen survivors, maybe more. Children, parents, scientists, a few retired Marines with busted knees and too much heart. They didn't salute us, didn't even know our names. But when they saw the tags we carried, Reyes, Kovacs, Juno, they let us in. Like that pain bought our place. Like grief was the only password that still worked. The leader was a guy named Dr. Kellenmore, exo-architect. Used to design cities on Saturn's moons before the collapse. Now he ran triage and coordinated food drops. He had the kind of face that looked tired even when he smiled, and hands that shook when he poured coffee. I saw your broadcast, he told me. You took down a Warcaster? I nodded. We made it bleed. He didn't cheer, didn't whoop like we were saviors. He just stared out at the sick bay behind him. You know what that means, don't you? Yeah, I said. They'll send something worse. It came 2 days later, not from orbit, from below. We were on patrol outside the camp perimeter. Nova had rigged motion sensors around the valley. I was helping Briggs reinforce a wall using alien scrap. Lightweight, shock-resistant, kind of beautiful in that ugly way only war metal can be. That's when we felt it. Not a sound, not a quake, a pressure. Like gravity had taken a breath and didn't like what it smelled. Nova's voice crackled in over the comms. We've got movement. Underground. Then the ground broke open. A claw the size of a truck wheel erupted from the soil, followed by a serpentine body of fused bone and chrome. It moved like a worm, coiled like a dragon, and screamed like metal being torn from the inside out. An excavator-class hunter drone, burrowing, silent, fast, and hungry. The first swipe tore through our wall like tissue paper. Civilians scattered. Screams filled the canyon. Briggs unloaded a full clip into its side, and it barely flinched. I grabbed the launcher strapped to my back and fired at the eye cluster. Missed. Or maybe it dodged. Didn't matter. Nova rerouted the power grid to zap the beast when it crossed the electric net we'd buried beneath the camp. The charge went off like lightning cracking through bone. It shrieked. coiled, twitched, but didn't die. Not even close. I don't remember the order of things after that. Just flashes. Briggs leaping onto its back with a combat knife between his teeth like a goddamn action movie. Nova screaming coordinates for the backup generator before the comms went dead. A child crying somewhere under a flipped transport vehicle. And me, running straight at the monster with a magnetic grenade in one hand and a prayer I didn't believe in anymore. I hit the joint behind the jaw. The charge stuck. I dove, rolled, hit my shoulder on a slab of concrete. Felt something snap. Then the boom. Alien ichor sprayed like tar. One of its limbs exploded off. But it didn't stop. Because instinct? Instinct is a hell of a thing. And this thing had been programmed with just one instinct. Eliminate humans. All of them. Briggs didn't make it. I found what was left of him near the fusion coil. Hands still on the ignition lever. Half his chest crushed. But the beast? Dead. He'd overloaded the core. Let it detonate point blank, vaporizing most of the drone in a flash of light bright enough to cast shadows on the moon. The camp didn't cheer, didn't clap, just stared in that stunned, holy way people do when death comes too close to breathe on their necks. That night, Nova and I sat under the shell of an old water tower. Didn't talk, didn't need to. The stars blinked above us, cold and far and uncaring. She handed me half of a protein bar, the good kind, chocolate-flavored, or at least pretending to be. I took a bite, tasted like cardboard in survival. Then she said something I didn't expect. They didn't think we'd last this long. I turned to her. Who? The aliens. She shook her head. No. Us. And she was right. We weren't supposed to. We were a fragile species. Bones made of calcium and pride. Blood too thin. Muscles too soft. But we had one thing they couldn't predict. Instinct. Not just to survive, but to resist. To fight even when the math says don't. To carry the names of the fallen like armor and charge the jaws of death anyway. They thought we'd break, but we bend, and then we bite. The next morning, I buried Briggs myself, used part of the excavator's claw as his headstone, carved his name into it with a plasma cutter. Below it, I etched a phrase I'd heard him mutter once when we were patching up a gun turret. Better to die swinging than live kneeling. Nova stood beside me the whole time. Didn't say a word. Just placed a single cigarette on the mound and whispered goodbye. Later that day, Dr. Marr brought us news. We intercepted a coded signal, he said. Short range. Not ours. I frowned. What kind of signal? He hesitated. Human. They were calling from the Rockies. Somewhere near the old NORAD base. A small band of soldiers. Engineers. Survivors. Said they had something important. Something ancient. Something the aliens didn't want us to find. He showed me the waveform. It pulsed like a heartbeat. But deep beneath the noise, I heard something else. A whisper. Not in words, but in instinct. Something calling to us from the bones of the earth. And whatever it was, it wanted to be woken up. The old world had secrets. We just never thought we'd live long enough to dig them up. After Briggs died and we buried the excavator drone in fire, I thought maybe the worst had passed. That maybe, somehow, we'd caught the enemy off guard. Bought humanity some breathing room with blood and fire. But war doesn't slow down when you get tired. It just shifts shape. And when Dr. Marr brought us that shortwave signal, jittering out of the Rockies like a heartbeat buried in ice, I felt it in my bones. Something was calling us. And it wasn't human. Not anymore. We left at dawn. Just Nova and me. The rest of the camp had to stay. Too wounded. Too valuable. There were kids to protect, generators to fix, food to ration, survivors. And we weren't built to be caretakers. We were the sharp edge. The part of humanity that didn't shelter, but stabbed back. Nova hacked us a route through old U.S. military satlinks and what remained of the orbital debris network. We plotted a path through ghost towns and frost-swept ruins, weaving around patrol zones where alien scouts still sniffed for warm blood. We rode in silence most of the way. An old recon buggy patched together with parts from a Tesla flatbed, a Martian snow hauler, and a bit of alien scrap for flavor. It hissed and growled, but it moved. That was enough. Somewhere past the Colorado state line, Nova finally spoke. You ever been to NORAD? I shook my head. Closest I got was reading a training manual with blacked out pages. Figures. Everything important gets buried. She didn't mean just bunkers. By the third day, the air started to change. Not in a meteorological way. Not just wind or cold or pressure. It was heavier. Like walking into a room that remembers too many arguments. Like a church where something holy died a long time ago. The trees were silent. The snow crunched wrong under our boots. Even the birds, if there were any left, refused to sing here. It wasn't natural, and maybe that was the point. We reached the mouth of the base at midnight. It looked like a wound carved into the mountainside, concrete teeth, rusted gates, and ancient American pride crumbling into gravel. The door itself had been cracked open from the inside, not blasted, not breached, opened, like something inside had decided it was time to walk. Inside, we found the first bodies, not human, not exactly alien either, tall, elongated, wrapped in something like armor but grown, not forged. They weren't part of the invasion force. These were older, stranger, fossils wearing war paint, and every single one had been torn apart. Nova crouched over a cracked skull, brushing ice off the bone with gloved fingers. This wasn't an attack, she whispered. It was containment. I swallowed hard. Then why had it been unlocked? The deeper we went, the weirder it got. Lights flickered on without being touched. Doors opened before we reached them. The air tasted like ozone and memory. And in the silence, I kept hearing something. Not sound, a feeling. Like a thought brushing against mine. Not words, just pressure. A direction. Down. We reached sublevel 9 through an old cargo lift barely holding together. The map said it was an old experimental archive zone, off limits even before the war. Nobody on Earth was supposed to know it existed, which, of course, meant something very important was buried there. The walls down here weren't steel. Not anymore. They'd been replaced by something older, darker, smooth, like obsidian, but warm. Living? Breathing? I didn't want to know. At the center of it all, we found the sarcophagus. That's the only word that fits. It hovered, suspended above a ring of alien runes, half melted, half burned into the floor like someone had tried to erase them and failed. The coffin itself was seamless, metallic, etched with patterns that looked like veins or circuitry or both. It pulsed once every few seconds, faint, steady, like a sleeping heart. Nova circled it, slow and careful. This isn't theirs, she said. The aliens, she nodded. Not the invaders, not the ones burning our cities. This tech, it predates them. How do you know? She looked up at me, her eyes reflecting that pale blue pulse. Because they're scared of it. The signal we picked up, it was coming from inside the sarcophagus, encrypted in a frequency we weren't supposed to be able to hear. But it wasn't just data. It was instinct. It was thought. It was invitation. And God help me, I felt drawn to it. I stepped forward, raised my hand, and the sarcophagus opened. No gears, no hiss, no dramatic explosion. Just a whisper of light and a release of pressure so deep it made my ears pop. Inside was a shape. Not dead, not alive, something in between. It looked human, mostly, broad-shouldered, covered in plated armor that looked like it had grown from its own skin. Eyes closed, breathing slow, like it had been waiting. And then, it opened its eyes. Blue, not glowing, not alien, human, but deeper, brighter. It looked at me with the kind of calm you only see in people who've already died and come back with stories they'll never tell. Then it spoke. Its voice was low, heavy, like mountains moving. You were late. I didn't move, didn't speak. My brain scrambled to make sense of it. Nova stepped beside me, gun half raised. Who are you? The figure stood, 7 feet tall, armor clicking softly with every motion. It looked down at us like a teacher staring at 2 confused students. I am what your kind left behind, it said. When you first reached the stars, when you built weapons to fight gods, when you buried your nightmares so deep, even memory forgot them. Nova's grip tightened. You're one of us? I was. Before war changed what that meant. It stepped forward, slowly, like it didn't want to startle us. But even its presence was pressure, like gravity focused into a man. The enemy above fears me. That's why they never touched this place. Why they left the ruins to rot instead of raising it. I narrowed my eyes. So what are you? A weapon? A prisoner? It smiled faintly. Both. We didn't sleep that night. Not really. We set up a fire in the sublevel, ate in silence, and kept staring at this being, this relic of a forgotten war. He told us his name was Varen. Said he once led an elite human strike force against a galactic uprising long before Earth forgot space travel. Before we fell into myth and silence and thought the stars were empty. But Varen, he remembered. He remembered a time when Earth raised monsters of its own. Not beasts, soldiers, created not to defend, but to win, at any cost. And now, after centuries buried beneath rock and snow and secrecy, we'd woken one up. And the timing couldn't be worse. Because the aliens, the ones who torched our cities, erased our armies, and sent warcasters to burn our hope, they felt them wake up. We intercepted their panic on satellite scramblers. They were rerouting a fleet to Colorado, to NORAD, to us. Varen didn't flinch. didn't pace or plan or panic. He just looked out at the frozen horizon beyond the bunker doors and whispered a single phrase that chilled me more than the snow ever could. Good, let them come. There's a moment after the first storm when everything goes quiet. Not peaceful, not safe, just still, like the world's holding its breath before the next punch lands. That's what the bunker felt like, even with the heat lamps humming, even with Nova checking the comm grid every 5 minutes, pretending the signal strength meant something, even with him sitting by the cracked concrete door like some ancient knight waiting for a war that had just caught up with him. Varen, the relic, the weapon, the one buried in the dark so long we'd forgotten what we were capable of. He didn't eat, didn't sleep, just sat there, sharpening the edge of his gauntlet with a sliver of obsidian pulled from the sarcophagus chamber. Sparks danced off the stone, casting shadows that looked too sharp, too old to belong in this century. Every now and then, he'd glance at us, me or Nova, and give the smallest nod, like he was remembering what humans were supposed to look like. Nova had questions. Of course she did. Why were you buried? She asked him that night, when the wind howled against the mountains hard enough to rattle the pipes. Varen didn't turn to her, just kept sharpening that edge. Because we stopped winning. I leaned forward. That's not an answer. He paused, let the silence settle before finally speaking again. You built us in an age when war was no longer about victory. It was about survival. We were the last line, the sharpest edge, the costliest mistake. Nova raised an eyebrow. So, you lost. No, he said quietly. We won. But the price made humanity fear itself. He didn't elaborate. Wouldn't. But I believed him. There was something ancient in his voice. A sadness that didn't come from defeat, but from remembrance. And maybe that's what scared me most. Because if this was what we had buried to keep peace, what kind of monsters had we become when we needed him again? 2 days passed. The skies stayed quiet. We kept expecting the enemy to fall on us like rain. Every radar ping made Nova reach for her rifle. Every gust of wind made my skin tighten. But they didn't come. Not yet. That's when the scouts arrived. Not alien. Not fully human either. They called themselves Ashgard. 3 of them, all wrapped in scavenged armor and dust. Faces hidden behind masks etched with old military insignia, faded like bruises. The tallest one, an older man with a voice like crushed gravel, called me by name. You're the one from the broadcast, he said. I nodded slowly. Ghost Division. He tilted his head. Didn't think anyone from that outfit still breathed. Most don't. His eyes moved to Varen, standing silently by the back wall like a statue with bad intentions. You woke it up, didn't you? I didn't answer. He smiled beneath his mask. Good. We'll need it. The Ashgard weren't soldiers. Not exactly. They were survivors, sure, but not like the people back at Mars camp. These were old resistance. The ones who never stopped fighting, even when the governments fell. The ones who watched orbital strikes from rooftops and mapped enemy troop paths in blood and memory. They'd come with a warning. The fleet's moving, the old scouts said. 30 ships, warcasters, artillery-class harvesters. They're not just coming to kill you. Nova tensed. Then what? They're coming to erase the memory of you. We knew what that meant. This wasn't about a bunker anymore, or a relic. This was about symbolism. We lit a spark, woken up something ancient, sent a message the enemy couldn't afford to let echo across the stars. So they were bringing the fire, not to defeat us, to bury us. We had 3 days, maybe 4. And we had a choice, run or stand. Nova pulled me aside after the scouts left to make their reports. You know we can't hold this place, she whispered. Not with what they're sending. I didn't disagree, but I looked at Varen, sharpening his edge by the firelight, eyes glowing faintly in the dark like memory made flesh. And I said the words before I could stop myself. Then we don't hold it. We make it cost. We turn the mountain into a fortress. Nova rewired old defense systems left over from the Cold War, patched together with stolen alien cores. Drones buzzed back to life, some still covered in moss, others humming with new purpose. The Ashgard brought mines, artillery, old tricks, new rage. Varen did his own thing. I watched him walk into the snow barefoot, armor hissing softly against the wind. He stood at the edge of the ridge for hours, palms open, as if listening to the earth. When he came back, he whispered, "They're scared." I laughed, bitter. Doesn't look like fear. Looks like an execution squad. He turned to me. They do not fear death, but they fear pain. What kind of pain? He smiled. The kind they cannot name. The night before they arrived, we gathered in the command room. There weren't speeches, no grand music or fist pounding, just quiet. Nova cleaned her rifle. The Ashgard checked their charges. One of them, young, nervous, probably hadn't even seen 20 yet, asked if we had a plan. Varen answered, "We bleed them, one drop at a time. Every second they spend fighting us is a second they do not spend killing the rest of your world." The kid blinked. "And then what?" "Then they kill us," Varen said simply. Nova looked up. "You really think we're not making it out of this?" He looked at her, then at me. "No." And there was something comforting in that. Honest. Human. Because there's a strange kind of freedom that comes when you stop expecting to live. You start fighting like the dead. And the dead don't hesitate. When morning came, the sky split. Not like the first time. No glorious light or sudden shockwave. Just shadows. So many they darkened the sun. Ships shaped like blades. Drones the size of tanks. Warcasters drifting like specters across the cloud line. They came not like an army, but like a verdict. And we were the crime. Nova took the first shot. A scout drone broke formation above the ridge. She brought it down with one clean shot between its sensors, and before it even hit the snow, we were in it. Mines lit up the cliffs. Auto-turret screamed. The Ashguard fought like they had nothing left to lose. And Varen moved like a storm wearing skin. He leapt between wrecks, tore drones apart with his hands, speared a warcaster mid-descent with a javelin of molten alloy pulled from the earth itself. I lost sight of him after the third wave, but his roar echoed between the mountains like thunder from a forgotten god. I fought where I could, covered Nova, rearmed a plasma rail when it jammed mid-charge, dragged two wounded scouts behind the shield wall before a cannon blast vaporized the ice we'd been standing on. And for a moment, just a breath, it looked like we might hold. Then they dropped the Titan. It was massive, a siege-class horror built from the bones of dead worlds. 6 legs, cannons like mountains. Its arrival cracked the mountain face like a fault line. Our lines buckled. Turrets melted. The Ashguard screamed for fallback positions. Nova looked at me, face smeared with soot and blood. "This is it." I nodded. Then Varen came crashing through the snow. Half his armor melted, dragging a fusion bomb behind him like a sack of potatoes. "No fallback," he growled. "No retreat." Nova blinked. "That's suicide." He didn't flinch. "That's a message." The plan was simple. Let the Titan step too close. Let it think it's won. Then feed it the one thing it didn't expect. Our wrath. We rigged the core with everything we had left. Nova spliced the trigger into a neural loop and handed it to me. "You sure you want to pull this?" she asked. I looked at the battlefield, at the smoke, at the blood, at the dying sun setting behind the enemy's war fleet. And I smiled. Let them remember who we were. The Titan stepped forward, and we made sure its last step was onto our fuse. There are moments that stretch time, not in a sci-fi way. No wormholes, no tech jargon, just silence. A silence so complete it eats sound, breath, thought. That's what it felt like when the Titan stepped on the fuse. The mountain shook, not like thunder, not like collapse. It trembled like it knew what was coming. And for one long heartbeat, all of us, every fighter left, every drone, every warcaster drifting through the sky, we all paused. Even the wind seemed to stop, as if the planet itself had taken one last breath. Then fire, not just heat, not just light. This was history detonating. The fusion core Varen dragged up from hell wasn't just a bomb. It was a relic, a weapon from a time when humanity didn't care if the sky split. So long as we were the ones pulling the trigger. The blast tore through the Titan's midsection like it was made of paper and pride. Shrapnel screamed through the air, slicing enemy ranks in half. Shockwaves rippled across the cliffs, turning drones to ash and warcasters to falling stars. I was thrown backward, slammed into a boulder, helmet cracked, lungs crushed by pressure that didn't feel entirely physical. And for a while, I didn't know if I was alive. Didn't care, because I knew we'd hit them hard. When I came to, the world was orange and gray. Flames danced on the snow like hellfire dressed for winter. Nova was crouched beside me, hair burned at the edges, eyes wild and wet. "Don't move," she said, hands on my chest. "You've got shrapnel in your side." I coughed, tasted iron. "Just another hole. Patch it." She didn't laugh, didn't smile, just pressed gauze into my ribs and whispered, "We did it." But I could see it in her face. We hadn't done enough. The Titan was down, yes. A mountain-sized corpse smoking in the crater it made. But the rest? Still coming. More ships in the sky. More drones falling like steel rain. Warcasters rallying their remaining forces. No longer cautious. No longer careful. Angry. They'd underestimated us. And now? They were going to bury us in retaliation. Varen was gone. At first, we thought he died in the blast. But there was no body. Only a trail scorched into the snow. Deep, heavy, leading toward the ridge, away from the wreck. Nova found his sword embedded in a blackened drone carcass, still hot to the touch. He's still fighting, she said quietly. And then, more to herself, of course he is. We rallied who we could. 10 Ashgard. Maybe 8 more fighters still standing. Most wounded. Some missing limbs. One girl couldn't have been older than 15. Cradling a pulse rifle like it was her brother's photograph. And me? I could barely stand. But I stood anyway, because if Varen was still out there, I wouldn't let him fight alone. We pulled back to the fallback ridge, the last defensible position. Beyond it, just open tundra. Nothing but snow and silence and sky. We patched together what weapons we had, bolted scrap into shields, laid our final mines with trembling hands. Nova stayed busy, wiring a last-ditch signal beacon, something to punch through the jamming field and scream our location into the void. Maybe someone's listening, she said. I nodded, wiping blood from my eyes. And maybe someone cares. She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Hope's a strange thing. Comes and goes like a fever. But rage? Rage stays. That night, the sky turned red. No sunset. No dusk. Just the reflection of the enemy descending. Their ships didn't land so much as settle, like spiders choosing where to feast. And standing at the front of them was a new warcaster, larger than the rest, twice the height of a man. Body plated in silver-black alloy etched with ancient symbols. No face, just a mask of smooth chrome, gleaming like a tombstone in moonlight. It didn't speak, didn't need to. Its presence was its threat. Its silence said it all. You had your chance, now you pay. We lined up anyway, Nova beside me, her hands trembling on the rifle, but her stance solid. Ashgard spread wide, scarred, shaking, whispering last words into the snow. And then the warcaster stepped forward, lifted one arm. The signal was clear. In them, I don't remember much after that. Just flashes, heat, screams, the roar of plasma cannons ripping apart stone, the smell of scorched metal and burnt snow and fear. I fired until my rifle clicked empty. Then I threw it, grabbed a shard of drone blade, and started cutting whatever got close. One Ashgard tackled a warbeast 3 times his size with a grenade in his teeth. Another used her own blood to fry an enemy sensor node. Nova kept the beacon alive with one hand and held the line with the other. We were dying, but not begging. Then, just when I thought we'd fall, the sky split again, but this time not from them, from him. Varen fell from the heavens like a second sunrise, clad in armor that glowed red-hot from within, his eyes like blue fire behind a helmet carved from the ruins of the Titan we'd killed. He slammed into the warcaster mid-charge, shattering the enemy's form like glass dropped from heaven. His fists were meteors, his rage volcanic, and for the first time, they panicked. I saw it, the shift, the retreat, the way the warcaster tried to disengage, the way the drones stuttered in their assault, like code corrupted by awe, because they weren't fighting a man anymore. They were fighting a memory, an echo of Earth's darkest weapon, and they remembered. Varen didn't stop, didn't pause. He waded into them like death made flesh. Blades, cannons, war cries. Nothing touched him, because this wasn't about winning. This was about reminding them that we, the species of breath and bone and defiance, we burned too. I reached Nova, bloodied, dying. She was holding the beacon. Got it working, she gasped. Where's it aimed? I asked. She smiled through cracked lips. Everywhere. We sent the signal, not a call for help. A message, a scream into the dark. We are still here. We bled the sky. We burned the gods. Let them hear it. Let every world under their rule hear it. Let every prisoner, every rebel, every child hiding in a burnt-out city hear it. Let them know the battle didn't end that night. Not really. They pulled back, regrouped, but they didn't press again. Not immediately, because they saw something in us that terrified them. Not our weapons, not Varen, our willingness to burn. Later, when the smoke faded and the last warcaster's wreckage cooled beside the mountain, I stood alone, watching the horizon. Nova lay in a mebe built from salvaged drone panels. The Ashgard buried their dead in rows marked with fusion cores and melted steel. And Varen? Gone again. No trail, no body, just a sword left standing in the snow, glowing, waiting. I don't know if we won that day. Probably not. But I know what we became. Not ghosts, not survivors, not even soldiers. We became the fire, the one they feared, the one they'll never forget. The hardest part of survival isn't the bleeding. It's the after, the stillness, the silence, the quiet reckoning that comes when the screaming finally fades and you realize you're still breathing. But not all of you made it. And what's left? It isn't the same. We held the mountain. Somehow, the enemy didn't come back. Not right away. They left wreckage behind, mangled warcasters, broken drone parts, even a few of their dead. The kind of thing you don't see often. Aliens don't mourn. They retrieve, recycle, erase. But they left this time. Left their dead in the snow. Like even they didn't want to be near what we'd become. Nova was alive. Barely. The med bay was a joke. Half a tent, half a dream. She'd taken shrapnel through the lower back, torn through muscle and hope. But she wouldn't let the ash guard put her under. Not until she saw me. She grabbed my wrist as I leaned over her, eyes glassy, voice a whisper of gravel. "Did it work?" she asked. I nodded. "The signal's out." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in days, I saw her rest. Not sleep, just let go, even if only for a breath. The ash guard started cleaning up the battlefield. No cheering, no victory songs, just quiet. We stacked drone parts, salvaged batteries, pulled dog tags from what was left of our own. I found a helmet half buried in the snow. It had belonged to Rook, one of the younger fighters, the one with a nervous laugh and shaky hands. I never saw him fall, but I knew this was all that was left. I held it for a long time, and then I buried it, not because I had to, but because someone should. That's the thing they don't tell you about war. It doesn't end when the gunfire stops. It echoes, in the broken ribs, in the bloodstained boots, in the names you mutter in your sleep because your mind doesn't know what else to hold on to. And in that echo, something else starts to grow. Not peace, but purpose. We gathered in the command post 2 nights later. The stars had returned, cold and sharp. Watching, Nova was upright, leaning on a cane built from the leg of a drone she personally shot down. Her voice was rough, but steady. "We made noise," she said. "Too much," muttered one of the ash guard. She shook her head. "Exactly enough." Dr. Kellenmar's voice crackled over the short-range receiver sometime after midnight. He was alive. So were the camps. The relay tower we knocked out in the beginning? That ripple spread. Resistance cells across the continent had picked up the beacon. They were responding, gathering, planning. The flame we lit in the mountains? It had become a wildfire, and the ashes were speaking. But fire doesn't come without smoke. And the aliens? They'd noticed. They were changing, not retreating, adapting. We intercepted fragments from their comms. Hard to translate, harder to stomach. But one phrase came through, over and over again. The anomaly must be neutralized. They weren't talking about Nova, not about me. They were talking about Varen. He hadn't come back, not since the battle, but his sword still stood, embedded in the snow near the cliff's edge, untouched, unmoved, humming low with an energy none of us could identify. Ashgard engineers tried to scan it. They failed. Nova tried to lift it. It burned her hand, so we left it. A monument, a warning, a prayer. And we started building again. Not just walls, not just weapons. We rebuilt intent. We scouted the wrecks, stripped every bit of usable tech, rewired alien cores into old human hardware, created EMP traps using salvaged Titan cables. Everything we touched became something sharp. Even the food rations started tasting less like desperation and more like routine. It was strange, this feeling, to survive a slaughter and still plan, to think about tomorrow, not just tonight. We were bleeding, but we were awake now. Then something unexpected happened. A visitor, human, but not from any resistance cell we knew. She arrived alone, no armor, no gun, just a long coat, dusty boots, and a data pad that pulsed with frequencies no one had seen before. Her name was Kale. She said she was from the Fringe. We asked what that meant. She said, "I'm from the places your map stopped bothering to include." Kale had information, detailed schematics of alien infrastructure, notes on buried human tech caches and long-dead cities, a list of potential underground bases still running silent. And more importantly, she knew Varen. "I've seen his kind before," she said, her voice low, careful. "Not him, but others." We stared. There were more. Nova asked. Kale nodded. They were called the Ember Corps. The name didn't sound military. It sounded mythic. Kale explained. Back in the earliest age of deep colonization, when Earth first reached out past Mars, there was a secret project, a contingency. If Earth were ever invaded, if we were ever outmatched, if the stars turned hostile, they would create a last line of defense. Not AI, not drones, people, modified, enhanced, hardened, humans sculpted into living weapons. But Earth buried them, not because they failed, but because they worked too well. Varen was one of them, maybe the last, until we pulled him back from the deep. Kale looked at us, eyes steady. "The aliens aren't afraid of your armies. They've crushed those. They're afraid of him, of what he represents." Nova sat forward, wincing slightly. "Then we find him." Kale nodded. And then we find the rest. That sentence cracked something open inside me. The rest. The idea that we weren't alone. That somewhere, beneath the rubble of forgotten wars and scorched timelines, there were others like him, like us, still breathing, still fighting, still waiting. It was a fool's hope, but I'd take a fool's hope over no hope at all. That night, I walked to the edge of the ridge, snow crunching under my boots, the wind whispering like a secret I wasn't meant to hear. Varen's sword still stood where he left it. I stood beside it, silent. I didn't speak, didn't pray, but I did remember. Every scar, every face, every name I'd carried from the first blast in orbit to the burning corpse of that Titan. They weren't gone. They were etched into me. My ribs, my hands, my spine, my voice. These scars weren't marks of weakness. They were my story. And when the enemy returned, when they tried again to finish what they started, I would speak that story with flame. The hardest part of chasing ghosts isn't the distance. It's the doubt. The long, cold stretches where nothing answers back but wind and static. Where the stars look down at you with that quiet indifference, like they've already seen how this ends. But we moved anyway, because sometimes belief doesn't need proof, just direction. Kale's information changed everything. The Ember Core wasn't legend anymore. It was real. A project buried so deep that not even the last surviving generals had clearance. Engineered humans, born in shadows, forged for wars we weren't supposed to survive. And Varen? He was the first spark, but not the last. There were others, maybe still alive, maybe just names etched in silence. But that was enough. That had to be enough. We left the mountain 2 weeks after the battle. Nova still limped, cane in one hand, rifle in the other. Her eyes stayed sharp, though, sharper than I'd ever seen them, like something inside her had clicked, like the fight had given her clarity. Kale came with us. She didn't ask for permission, just loaded her bag, handed me a map with 6 circled coordinates, and said, "We start with Nevada." I didn't argue, because in a world of falling ash and crumbling steel, you listen to the ones who still know where to go. The ride south was brutal. No convoys, no support, just an old armored crawler we named Ashwing and whatever power cells we could rip from downed drones along the way. We passed through towns turned to ghost echoes, homes where the doors swung open in the wind, children's toys frozen mid-fall in dust and debris. One place had a message burned into the side of a grocery store wall. "We fought. Remember US." Nova stared at it a long time, didn't say a word, just raised her fist once, like a salute. And we kept going. The first facility was beneath a mountain range in Nevada, hidden behind an old mining site no one had touched in decades. Kale led us through a cracked ventilation shaft, down into a cavern lined with steel and old ambition. It was cold, quiet, but not dead. Some of the systems still blinked with low, red power, like they'd been waiting. We found the chamber on the 4th sublevel. 6 cryopods, each one rimmed with frost, humming faintly, identical in size, design, and silence. Kale moved slowly, reverently. "These weren't soldiers," she said, tracing a name etched into one pod. "They were weapons. Unwilling, unready. They didn't sign up for war." Nova looked up. "Then why keep them?" Kale didn't flinch. "Because Earth knew it would need monsters one day, even if it had to freeze them until the stars burned." We checked for vitals. 3 were dark, gone, nothing left but echoes and ice. But the other 3? They breathed, slow, shallow, steady. One was a woman, tall, lean, with skin laced in pale gold alloy and veins that pulsed like slow lightning. Her name tag read Ember 4, Celine. The other 2 were men. One bore deep scarring even under frost, face half metal, half forgotten. The other looked peaceful, young, like he'd been frozen mid-dream. Nova wiped frost from the control panel. "Can we wake them?" Kale nodded, but her voice turned heavy. "We can try." Waking an Ember wasn't like flipping a switch. It was more like calling someone back from a deep, dark ocean. Their minds weren't just asleep. They were buried, disconnected from time, from pain, from purpose. Kale warned us it could go wrong. That some never came back the same. That one Ember had torn her own pod apart mid-thaw and vanished before anyone could say her name. But we had no choice. We needed them. We woke Celine first. The thaw was slow, steam rising like breath returning to lungs. Her eyes fluttered once, twice, and then opened. Gold, not glowing, just impossibly alive. She didn't speak at first, didn't move, just stared at us like we were memories she couldn't place. Then, finally, she whispered, "Protocol broken." Kale stepped forward, voice low. "Careful, you're safe." Earth needs you. Again, Celine blinked slowly. Then something inside her shifted, and she stood. No wobble, no weakness. She looked at us, at the ruin in our clothes, the scars, the grit. You fought. It wasn't a question. Nova met her gaze. We bled. Celine nodded. Then I will burn. The others came next. The scarred one, Mace, took longer. His mind had been through something heavy, something scorched. When he woke, he didn't speak at all, just stood, breathing slow, fist clenched, eyes scanning like a predator out of hibernation. The youngest, Ren, came back smiling. Not joy, but familiarity, like part of him had been listening this whole time. I heard the call, he said. I just didn't know anyone still meant it. We brought them up to speed, showed them the battlefield footage, the beacon message, the burn marks in the snow where Varen stood. Celine watched every second in silence. Mace paced like a caged animal, jaw tight. Ren just leaned against a wall, humming a tune I didn't recognize. When it ended, Nova asked the only question that mattered. Will you fight? Celine didn't hesitate. We were built to burn for Earth. Mace spoke for the first time. No more freezing. And Ren just grinned. Let's remind them what human fire feels like. We left that place changed. Not just because we had more soldiers, but because we had flame bearers. People forged before fear, whose memories were built from steel, pain, and clarity. And the enemy? They felt it. As we crossed Utah, moving east again, the skies began to stir. Enemy probes flew lower, faster, bolder. They knew. Their comms started crackling with new designations. They no longer said, Earth insurgents. They said, Ember threat. Kale smiled when she intercepted it. You see, she said, we're not ghosts anymore. We're prophecy. Nova rolled her eyes. Let's hope prophecy bleeds less. I didn't laugh, because I could feel it in my chest now. That vibration I'd only ever felt when Varen moved. That low hum like the world was holding its breath again. Only this time, it wasn't waiting for judgment. It was waiting for us. We stopped for one night outside the Colorado border. Celine sat alone, hands folded like a priestess in prayer. Mace stood watch, unmoving. Ren made a fire, humming the same strange tune. Nova walked over, handed me a battered flask. You still scared? She asked. I took a sip, fire in my throat, warmth in my ribs. I'm scared we're not enough. She nodded slowly. Me too. Then looked at the embers. But I think we're closer than they want us to be. The next morning, the sun rose blood orange. Smoke on the horizon. Not ours. Not theirs. Someone else was burning. And in that fire, a new message flashed through the network. A pulse. A beacon. Another Ember Core site. Active. Buried in Kansas. Already under siege. We didn't speak. Didn't debate. We packed our gear, loaded ash swing, and pointed our wheels toward the smoke. Because we weren't just survivors anymore. We were emberbound. And the fire? It was waking. There's something haunting about an old war that never knew how to end. It leaves behind bones, but not just the kind buried in dirt. It leaves silence too. Thick, heavy, the kind that clings to the skin and makes your footsteps feel like trespass. That's what Kansas felt like. Not a battlefield, a grave. And we were the ones dumb or desperate enough to dig into it. We found the Ember site beneath what used to be Fort Ellison. Back in the old world, it was just prairie and ghosts, a forgotten mark on a forgotten map. Now, it was a crater, still smoking. The sky above it was choked in gray, not from the wind, not from weather, from warning. The kind of smoke that doesn't rise until something ancient has been stirred, and something terrible has tried to stop it. We came late, and we knew it. The alien fleet had gotten here first. Maybe they tracked the same signal we did. Maybe they had it pinned long before we even touched the mountain. Doesn't matter. They came with fire, and they erased. Buildings turned to slag. Fields cratered from orbital strikes. The trees burned from the inside out, still glowing at their roots. No bodies left, just scorch patterns. Outlines in the dirt where people had once stood. But here's the thing. The main bunker? Still intact? Celine was the first to step forward. She walked straight to the entry hatch without waiting for orders. Her hand hovered over the control panel, fingers flexing slightly like she was remembering a dream. I know this place, she said. Not just recognition. Something deeper. Ember, 12, she whispered. Call sign, Titan's Echo. He was stationed here. Nova stepped up beside her. Think he's still down there? Celine's voice dropped. If he is, he's not sleeping anymore. We entered slowly. Stairwell after stairwell of old metal and flickering lights. The facility hadn't powered down. It had locked in. Layers of security that hadn't been touched in decades still thrummed quietly, like a heart waiting for something to come back. And deep below it all, we found the vault, cracked open, like something had forced its way out. Kale read the logs aloud as we moved through the hallway. Status: breach, containment failed, protocol override, autumn dusk. I didn't know what autumn dusk meant, but it sounded final, like the kind of phrase someone writes just before the world tips over. We found signs of struggle in the cryo chamber. Melted alloy, deep gashes in the walls. A pair of broken drone husks slumped near the door, their cores still hot. Ren knelt beside them, squinting. They weren't destroyed, he said. They were ripped out of time. Nova raised an eyebrow. What does that even mean? Ren shrugged. I don't know, but I felt it. Like something twisted reality just enough to snap these things out of sync. I didn't like the sound of that. Celine didn't either, but she said nothing, just stared at the far wall, and the word etched into it by hand. Echo. That's when the noise started. Low, mechanical, not from the ceiling or the walls. From beneath us. Mace dropped into stance, fist crackling with kinetic energy. Ren powered up his field disruptors. I clicked the safety off my rifle, heart suddenly loud in my ears. Then the floor shuddered. Once, twice, and then he stepped into the room. I didn't recognize him at first. Too tall, too broad. The kind of presence that makes you feel small before you even realize why. His armor looked like it had been forged from the bones of tanks, black, scorched, massive. His helmet was cracked down the middle, revealing one eye, glowing pale blue. The other socket was dark. He didn't speak. Not yet. Just stood there, watching. Celine was the first to move. She stepped forward. No fear, no hesitation. Just memory. Echo, she asked softly. His head tilted. Recognition flickered. Then he spoke, voice like gravel under pressure. Celine. And just like that, it was like watching a star flicker back to life. They talked. Not long. Not in full sentences. Their communication was layered, half gestures, half memories braided together in silence. But what we understood was this. He had woken during the attack, too late to stop it, but just in time to retaliate. He'd torn through the alien vanguard like fire through dry grass. Warcasters, elite drop units, tactical shock squads, didn't matter. They died, all of them. And yet, he hadn't left the bunker. Not because he was trapped, because he was waiting. For what? Nova asked. Echo looked at her, then at me, then, finally, at Celine. For the rest of the fire. That's when we heard the sound outside. A low hum, building, pulsing. Kale went to the surface. We followed. The sky had turned black, not from smoke, but from arrival. The enemy had returned. Not a scouting party this time. Not a strike team. A cleansing fleet. You only send those when you've stopped trying to win a war. You send them when you want to erase the memory of a rebellion. Echo walked past us. Quiet. Heavy. He stood at the edge of the crater, staring up at the warships blotting out the moonlight. His fists clenched. Then he whispered, "Then let's remind them. We didn't have time to set traps. Didn't have the numbers. Didn't have the terrain. All we had were 5 embers, a crawler with 3 working turrets, and a handful of humans too tired to retreat. But we'd lit this fire, and we weren't going to let it die in silence." The first drop pods came screaming down like meteors. Echo caught the first one midair and crushed it. Celine lit up the battlefield with plasma arcs that danced like lightning pulled from the gods. Ren moved like a storm, fast, unpredictable, devastating, laughing even as enemy beams tore up the ground beneath him. Mace didn't just fight. He broke the rules, pulling energy from the impacts, channeling kinetic chaos into raw destruction. And me? I stayed with Nova, watched her calibrate the last turret, held the line with what was left of my rifle, fired until my fingers blistered, bleeding, burning, alive. We didn't win. Not completely, but we didn't lose either. And that, in this war, that's something. By morning, the ships were gone. The crater was half rubble, half sacred ground. And the embers? Still standing, singed, bloodied, but unbroken. Echo stood on the ridge, the sun rising behind him. He turned to us. "We're next." Nova looked at me. Kale pointed west. And I said, "Where the smoke is brightest, because that's where the silence lives now." And we were going to wake every last ember hiding inside it. They say that when a fire burns bright enough, it can be seen from worlds away. I don't know if that's true, but I do know this. By the time we reached the final front, the sky itself was bleeding fire. We'd become legends, not because we wanted to be, not because we had a choice, because sometimes the universe looks at you and decides you will be the reckoning. And so we were. The Ember Core had been the last hope, but it was only the beginning. What came next was chaos, a brutal symphony of ash and flame, metal and blood. The enemy threw everything they had at us. Ships blackened the stars, dropping warcasters like knives from a height too terrible to imagine. Ground units swarmed like locusts, relentless and soulless. They wanted to crush us, to snuff out the ember that dared to glow. We fought in the ruins of cities long dead, on plains scorched by firestorms, beneath skies torn open by plasma fire. Every step forward was paid for in blood, every breath earned with grit, but every heartbeat, every burning pulse, was a promise. I remember the night before the final battle. We gathered around a dying campfire. Celine was silent, staring into the flames like they held secrets no one else could see. Mace was sharpening his weapons with deliberate calm. Ren hummed a tune, something old, something forgotten. Nova sat beside me, hand on my shoulder. Her voice was soft. Tomorrow, we burn the sky. That phrase stuck. Burn the sky. Because it wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about changing the story, about turning fear into fire. Morning came on the wings of a storm. The enemy launched a full-scale assault, but we were ready. The ash wing rolled forward, its turrets lighting up the darkness like dawn's first fire. The embers moved like ghosts of war, Celine's plasma arcs carving paths through the enemy, Mace's kinetic strikes shattering armor and bone, Ren weaving through the chaos with lethal grace, and Echo Varen's Shadow Reborn led the charge. The battle was a blur. Explosions painted the sky, screams mixed with the roar of engines and gunfire. I was everywhere and nowhere, firing until my arms gave out, running until my lungs burned. At one point, I found myself face to face with a warcaster unlike any other, larger, more savage. Its eyes were pits of dark fire. Its blades hummed with hatred. It charged, and I stood. We fought like the world depended on it, because it did. Every strike was a story, every block a memory, every breath a defiance. When it raised its blade for the final blow, I saw something, a flicker, fear, and I took it. The warcaster fell. The sky cracked open with the roar of victory, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. Varen stood at the forefront, flames licking his armor. His voice was a growl. We end this. And we did. We pushed forward. Every inch was a battle. Every victory was paid for in scars. But slowly, the enemy faltered. Their lines broke. Their ships retreated. When the last warcaster fell, silence returned. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of endings. We stood on the battlefield, burned and broken, but unbowed. Nova looked at me, her eyes shining. We did it. I nodded. But the scars, she smiled. They speak, because that's what we'd become. Not just survivors, not just fighters, but fire. And fire doesn't die. It spreads. It consumes. It changes everything. We burned the sky, and we did it together. The stars still watch, still wait. But now they see us. We are the ember. We are the fire. We are the reckoning. And this is only the beginning.